The October 9th, 2013 meeting of the Ascension Parish Planning Commission will now come to order. Madam Secretary, please note that Mr. Robert Burgess is absent and all other commissioners are present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, introduction of staff. Ms. Webb.
Stacy Webb, Secretary for Planning and Development.
Lindsay Manda, Legal Counsel for Planning and Zoning.
Ricky Compton, Planning and Development Director.
Ben Moran, Planner.
Tim Ward, Engineering.
Lance Brock, Zoning Official.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the excellent work that you do. Agenda item number 5, Chairman's comments. A couple of things. First of all, we were very pleased to see the action of the Ascension Parish Council last Thursday to ratify our subdivision amendments that we had proposed. Especially want to thank Mr. Chafisi for representing the commission and Mr. Compton for, again, presenting the facts as we had gotten them and making the decision that they made, informing them so that they made a good decision there. The other thing I'd like to mention is that we've been asked to add an agenda item to this meeting. It's not on the agenda. And what I'd like to do is add it after agenda item 7, but I want to go ahead and get that approved right now. To add an agenda item to a public meeting, 2 things have to happen. We have to open up a public hearing, and we vote. Now, the agenda item that we're going to add is this. The Ascension Parish Council last Thursday passed a resolution requesting us to implement a moratorium on all travel trailer RV parks in the parish of Ascension for a period of 6 months. And the council felt, and the parish president felt, that this is an item that's going to affect a lot of people in this parish. A lot of construction will be going on, and we want to make sure that we can accommodate the people and provide places for maybe perhaps temporary workers to work at the same time without impinging on anyone's property rights or causing any negative consequences. So they asked us to implement this moratorium at the meeting tonight. So what we have to do, first of all, if there's anyone in the public who maybe would object or would not like for us to add this item to the agenda, we'll give you an opportunity to speak at this time. You can come forward and speak. So I'll open up a public hearing just to add the agenda item. Okay, nobody. Okay, well, I'll close the public hearing. Then the second part of that is we'll need a motion, a second, and a unanimous vote to add the agenda item, and we'll add it after agenda item 7. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Nizzo moves.
Second.
Mr. Bishop seconds. Any objections? And record, I think you'll need to record that I voted for it as well because it needs a unanimous vote. Okay, so we will get to that after agenda item 7. Agenda item 6 is approval or denial of the minutes of the September 11, 2013 Planning Commission meeting. What's your pleasure there, gentlemen?
Move for approval.
Mr. Chafisi moves for approval.
Second.
Mr. Ori seconds. Any objections? Those minutes stand approved. Agenda item 7 is consent agenda. There were originally 3 items on it. 1 was pulled. These items all have to do with the affidavit of mortgage declaration, and we take them all at once. And we just want to note for the record that there was no letter of objection on either of these from the mortgage company. They were notified and did not object. So we can approve all of this in one motion if you so.
Comment. In reviewing these, you're correct, there was no letter of objection. And in 174011, it addresses if these declarations are not encumbered by mortgage. In both cases, they're encumbered by mortgage. That being said, there were no letters of objection, and I guess what I'd like as part of the process is a statement from staff informing us, just as a matter of record, that there were no letters of objection. So at some point, you don't get a mortgage lender to come back and say, well, wait a minute, I wanted to object. So as a matter of record and thorough, to be thorough, I would ask that we include a statement from staff.
Okay, and just to let the public understand what's going on here, if we have a piece of property that's encumbered by a mortgage, and there's a request to divide it, the mortgage company may object. If they object, then that would stop the process of dividing the property until that got straightened out. So a piece of property can't be divided unless the mortgage company that has a mortgage on that property is notified and has no objection. So we are looking for a motion and a second on the consent agenda.
Motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Calendar moves, Mr. Ori seconds. Any objection? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. Okay, now we'll get to the item that we added to the agenda. And again, this is a resolution by the Ascension Parish Council. It was passed last Thursday, October 3rd, and it just reads as follows. A resolution by the Ascension Parish Council to request the Ascension Parish Planning Commission to implement a moratorium on all travel trailer RV parks in the parish of Ascension for a period of 6 months. And it was voted unanimously by the council. Now, at this point, might ask our legal counsel what is the process that we just can make a motion on this, or need a public hearing?
You would have a public hearing and discussion about whether or not, what the reasons are behind it, and then
Okay.
take a vote.
All right, okay. So before the public hearing, maybe if we could hear from staff as to give us some background on this and how it came about and where we're going to be heading in 6 months.
That's a good question. So we'll be talking about at our zoning commission meeting an item that we're trying to remove from the zoning tables. And that item speaks to a travel trailer park for tourists. It's my understanding that an applicant had spoken with the parish president about an idea for a travel trailer park for a tourist, and those are allowed in conservation and rural zoning. And the parish president did not feel that at this time we were ready to start accepting these things, because it was 180 plus units where property is currently zoned conservation. It was about 15 or 16 units per acre, so that's high density. So the idea was, if we enact this moratorium ASAP, we can get in and look at what are the implications if we do start allowing them. Do we put a time frame on them? Do you change the construction standards so that when the time frame is up, that they remove everything that was associated with that temporary worker housing? Where do you require it? Do you allow it where the flood zone exists? Do you restrict it based on zoning? So there's a lot of questions that we need to get to and work out through, I guess, the planning process. Do I think we're going to have all the answers in 6 months? I don't know. People are going to have to work pretty hard because this is a big issue. But simply removing travel trailer parks from tourists from the zoning tables is our first step to sort of say, we don't think that what you're doing is a travel trailer park for tourists. We don't define tourists in our code. And rather than have to sit there and Lance and I try to guess whether or not these are actually for tourists or for workers, we're just removing it from the code until we can evaluate what we actually want to do.
And I suppose the timeliness of this is such that the major construction projects in the area will require a large number of construction workers, many of whom will not live in this area, will be moving in from other areas on a temporary basis.
Yes, sir. We've been doing some research and looking at in North Dakota and West Texas and some of these areas in the United States where they've experienced some explosive job growth, where tens of thousands of laborers are descending upon these communities, and those communities are not ready. They're not ready to tell these people where they can and can't live and how that's going to happen. And you got a lot of people living in cars on the side of the road because they're working 18-hour days and just they get off, they eat, and they need a place to sleep. So as we move forward with the billions of dollars of industrial growth, we need to recognize that we've got tens of thousands of workers who are going to be descending upon this region, and we need to know where they're going to live.
Okay.
Yeah,
Question?
just one comment, Mr. Chairman. This should not be taken as an effort on the council's part or on ours to limit the amount of industrial growth that we get in the parish. That's not what this is about. It's just to do some smart planning about where that's going to happen. We certainly want to accommodate all the workers who intend to come into Ascension Parish to live and work, eventually to live permanently, we hope. So this is just, let's figure this out before it begins to happen without any plan. So,
And I would expect that government officials will be meeting with these industry people and the construction companies to talk through the best options for all these things. And I'm sure that this commission, if we need to be involved in this, you would all agree that it's something that we could sit down with people, talk about what would be the best approach to take so that we can accommodate all these workers without negatively impacting the residents of Ascension Parish. Okay, any other questions from commissioners or comments? Okay, at this point, we'll open up the floor for, open the public hearing. Anyone like to speak on this issue? Okay. All right, then at this point, we'll close the public hearing, and I will accept a motion.
Motion approved.
Okay, motion by Mr. Callen to approve the moratorium on travel trailer RV parks in the parish for a period of 6 months.
a second.
Second by Mr. Chafisi. Question?
Should we vote to approve this, what would be the effective date on this vote or when the resolution was issued?
This date?
This date, okay.
Should we put that in the motion? Or,
No, it's
okay,
understood.
it's
We all
automatic.
have-
assumed,
Okay.
okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussions? Ricky?
I would like to recommend that the motion state that we readdress this issue in 5 months to explore whether or not it needs to be extended. Because if we're currently working towards the answer, a moratorium generally needed an end, and we're saying that the end is when we resolve this issue. I'd like to say in 5 months, let's re-explore it and say, hey, we need 60 more days, we need 30 more days, or hey, we've resolved all the issues, let's end it.
Okay.
So that's what I would like to request.
Okay, so that, you think we need to put that in the motion, or could we just?
I would say bring it back here in 5 months so that we can talk about it again.
Okay.
Can we just adopt another resolution in 6 months or
Or
5 months?
Stacy, can you figure out how to
Is that
word that? All right.
Motion in conjunction with staff's recommendations.
We'll include a review in 5 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, we have a motion on a second. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that motion carries. Gets us to agenda item number 8, a public hearing to approve or deny the following family partitions. And we have 6 of them on the agenda. First one is John Duplashan property, lots J2A and J2B, Earls and Associates.
James Fagg representing Mr. Duplashan on the following family partition. Comments were made, addressed, corrected on the plat, asking the commission for approval.
All right, and as you may note, the staff has recommended approval. Any questions of commissioners? Okay, we'll open up a public hearing then. Do we have any cards on this, Stacy? Okay, thanks. So let's close the public hearing. Again, it's family partition, John Duplashan property. What is your pleasure in this one?
Move to approve.
Mr. Callen moves to approve.
A second.
Mr. Chafisi seconds. Any objection? Okay, that partition is approved. Next is Janet Michael property, lots A2A, 1C, 1, and A2A, 1C2, Earls and Associates.
Representing Mr. Dwight Sears on the following family partition. I don't believe any comments were made. Asking the commission for approval.
Okay. And again, all comments were addressed, and staff does recommend approval. Any questions of commissioners? Any cards? Okay, come on up at this time. We'll open up the public hearing, and you may approach the microphone up here and
Yes, sir, Mr. Donald.
Go ahead and identify yourself for the record.
Okay. My name is Jeremy Todd. I live all the way in the back of Kenneth Michael Road.
Okay. Okay, relative to this side, where do you live? Now,
I live all the way in the back of the property on the right-hand side.
okay.
I own the 2 acres all the way at the end.
On the opposite side of the road from these?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, you can go ahead and start.
All right, my main concern with Mr. Sears putting more residents there, he just added 4 trailers there, dug some culverts and some ditches, and he ran all the sewer lines to the ditches. Since then, since he put the property up, he's never maintained the ditches. The ditches have trees and shrubbery in them 7 foot tall. I have pictures of all that here. He said he was gonna maintain the road from the front to the end of his property, which is probably roughly 1,000 feet. Not one rock's been put on the road. Ditches haven't been maintained. And that was a private road for the last 12 years. That was my driveway. Now I have 10, 20 cars going down it, and of course, the road's gonna get abused. I called the parish said they wouldn't take it up, we have to maintain it. So my main concern here is, where do we go from there?
Okay. It is still a private road?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's a private road with 6 residents.
Any commissioners have any questions?
He also
Okay.
told us when he put those trailers there, that he was gonna have covered carports, skirting on the trailers, everything was gonna be nice. None of that's been done, and. He just put the trailers there, slapped them down, put some tenants in it.
Staff, how is this piece of property being subdivided into so many lots along a private servitude of access?
Well,
And
the
I
first
guess being
time,
rented out, maybe?
the first time it was done, they signed off on this, on the division. When they called the office to inquire about this division, we informed them that if they don't sign the plat, the division doesn't happen. Because it's
This
a
plat?
private servitude of access, which we require all users of that private servitude to either sign the plat or sign a predial servitude agreement. So if all users of the private access drive do not agree with the division, whether you guys approve it or not, it's not gonna
Doesn't
happen.
And we're talking about this plat that we're looking at now?
Yes, sir. The lots that were created a couple of months ago, they did sign that plat, but they were probably told something that just hasn't been followed through with.
So, have y'all signed this plat?
No, sir.
So even if we approve it, it's not gonna happen?
Unless they sign the
Unless they
plat.
sign.
Okay. We just haven't gotten to that point yet.
Correct.
Okay.
We don't require plats to be signed until after the commission has gone through the process.
So if one person decides not to sign the plat, it's killed.
Correct. And the policy was established for this exact reason, is that those private drives are being maintained by all of the users. And if all of the users do not agree to add additional traffic and load to those roads,
Yeah.
we don't believe they should be divided on.
Right?
Question, this is considered a family partition,
Yes, sir.
and
Rental property.
he's putting rental trailers on a family partition?
Once the lots are created, we do not control what goes on them and how they come to us to divide the property. We take people at their word. We don't go and do background checks and check birth
But
certificates.
isn't there a conveyance of title to the family members that has to be done?
Correct. Before
Prior
the
to
plat
that-
is signed, we require all that, and obviously he went through that the first time and is gonna go through it again.
So these 4 lots would be to family members of Mr. Sears
There's only 2 on this one.
on this one? Okay, I see.
Ricky, for the properties that have already been divided and developed where there are trailers existing, what obligation does the property owner have to maintain the ditches and do other things? And what can the parish do to
It's private.
require an it's private, so there's nothing the parish can do.
No,
So the
we-
best thing that can be done here is to at least limit the amount of damage that can be done to
Yes,
that
sir.
pipe. Yeah, okay.
See, I used to maintain that driveway before he put them trailers there. Every time I cut my grass, I would cut on both sides of those roads, 1,900 feet front to back. Since he's put those trailers there, I don't maintain that no more, and it's 7 foot tall with shrubbery in it that big
Yeah.
around.
And what type, is it a gravel road?
It's a gravel road all the way to the back, from 931.
Okay.
So he can subdivide this if he has, I see 5 lots here. If he has 5 children, he can subdivide this between his 5 children and then do what he wishes with those lots. He can sell them off. He can put a rental property on it. I mean, I
Correct.
see that we're only doing 2 lots here, but only one.
It's children,
Child is-
grandchildren, parents, grandparents.
Right, okay. So once he subdivides it to his one daughter into 2 lots, I guess, is what's going on here?
He's keeping one and giving one
He's
to
keeping one.
daughter.
But the issue to you is maintaining servitude and access roads, is that correct?
That's correct.
Under what circumstances would you sign this? If he agreed to, and let's say they're willing to sit down, discuss, negotiate, would you sign if he gave a written statement? He'd be willing to maintain, as you're asking?
It depends on how many trailers he's talking about putting here. I mean, if he told me it was gonna be one trailer, then he told me he was gonna build a house, and then he told me he didn't know what he was gonna do. I don't think Mr. Sears knows at this point what he's gonna do with that property. Or if he does, he's not telling us. Because at first he told me it was gonna be 4 trailers, now he's trying to put more.
Under what circumstances would you sign this? Or are there any circumstances?
I don't want any more residents on the road. I mean, I'll maintain the road if need be. I mean, if I gotta get out there and cut the roads for him not to put no more residents back there, no more traffic, so be it. But as far as the gravel goes, I mean, we gotta work something out on that because the parish don't wanna take it over and he's not doing anything about it, and I don't feel like I'm responsible for all that.
Okay. If this were not a family partition, he could not divide his property?
Correct. We don't allow the subdivision of property on non-public roads.
Okay, unless it was a family partition?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is he following all the guidelines under a family partition that could have some kind of ramifications if we voted against this? Does that question make sense the way I worded it?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's within your purview to deny a family partition based on an complaint or, comments from the public. But if you approve it, it's sort of in this exact same spot it's in anyway, because it's going to be held up by whether or not they'd sign the predial or the plat. And if they don't, it's the same result. So if you want to protect yourselves, you approve it contingent on the back property owners agreeing to all conditions and signing the plat and the predial, and it's the same thing as a denial.
I had that contingency then.
Do we have another person that'd like to participate in the public hearing?
There's a comment.
Yeah. Come and fill out a card if you would, please, sir, and then identify yourself.
Don't need to fill out now?
Yeah. You have a card from?
While he's doing that, it would seem that it would do no harm for us to approve the family partition. That's in our purview. Whether or not we have to add some caveat to that, I don't know that it's even necessary to do that. Apparently, no further development can happen here unless the residents.
That caveat's built in already.
Exactly. It's built in already, so I don't know that we need to add anything.
There's also a time frame, so if it hasn't been resolved in 6 months, it expires anyway.
Okay. Okay, sir, go ahead and identify yourself.
My name's Josh Davenport. I'm one of the renters that in the trailers. I just basically what he's saying is exactly right. We live down that road too. Everything he does is half done. He promised us everything in the world when we move in, and when we moved in, everything we've got's half done. The road's half done. We was promised the ditches and everything was gonna look nice. We was promised the grass was gonna be mowed. It's a hayfield right now. And even the road, like he said, gets worse and worse. And then he's got a garbage truck that comes down sometimes twice a week tearing the road up. And then he's just not maintaining anything. Everything's just a rat's nest everywhere. And the trailer that he's talking about putting in is gonna be right beside us. And everything's half done. It just looks worse and worse. We're paying really very high rent to stay there and was promised all these things, and it's just looking worse and worse and worse. And he had told me that too, that he was gonna put that trailer, or as many as he could fit, you know, so we're mainly worried about, we're wanting a nice place to live. We pay very high rent, but it's getting worse as the time goes on. And even the road with our vehicles coming down through there, there's huge potholes, and nothing's been done at all. He always promises to do this and that, but it's always weeks and weeks later, and then when he does come, he thinks of a reason to leave and promises weeks later again. So that was basically why we're here. We don't want to live in a trailer park, you know, and whenever we come down those roads, we like to have a nice place to live,
Right.
you know, so that was my concern. I was coming for him, because he's got a nice place, and it was a nice road, and it's completely grew up. I mean, trees down, and of a night when you go out, half the trailers are spilling the sewage onto the ground. When you walk out of a night, the sewer smell knocks you down. It's awful.
Okay, thank you.
Are we talking about issues of public safety?
Do
Are we talking about issues of public safety?
I wouldn't, I don't know. You mean like, is it a, like, would it hurt?
Hazards?
It could be. Like I said, of a night, if you come outside of a day, you don't smell it because the heat's there. Of a night, when you come out, you smell sewage that just knocks you down. And the trailer next to us, for a long time, they had a pipe that come underneath the trailer that would spill the sewage out until they stayed on him to fix it. And then the septic that we got is caving in. You know, everything's just building up. Everything's falling apart. He does everything by the bare minimum that he can get away with.
Okay, thank you. Now, Ricky, the prior division upon which he's put these trailers, that was a family partition as well?
Yes, sir. It's on a private road, so that's the only way it could have been.
Okay, so would it be correct to assume that he did not follow the spirit of the family partition process?
That would be a correct assumption.
Okay. And he's asking for another one?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is not beyond history that family partitions have been denied when complaints have come in and said they did a previous family partition and now it's rent housing, and the commission in the past has denied those because they've already exhibited a history of that's what they're doing with that division.
Okay.
The other two previous lots are still in the family member's name. One is the mother's the owner and the father is the owner of the
Okay.
lot. So he is he is not the owners of those other two lots.
Okay.
And as far as the servitude of passage, I mean, it's not only my client's responsibility. Everybody down that road has a responsibility to maintain that road. Every time one of those lots were subdivided, they signed the servitude agreement, private servitude, to maintain the road themselves. So it has to be a mutual agreement between everybody. It's a civil matter. If one person's not helping to maintain the road, it's a civil matter where they all have to come together. It's like you said, it's,
Okay.
if they don't agree to it, the servitude, use of the servitude.
All right.
We used to be able to subdivide property off of a private road as long as they built the road to parish standards. Well, about 2 years ago, they stopped allowing us to do that. It used to be, it'd have to be, you know, a nice road. Now we can't do that.
Okay.
So now the family partition is the only route you can divide property.
Okay. All right, do we have any other speaker cards, Stacy? No one else would like to speak on this issue? Okay, at this time, then, we will close the public hearing. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Yeah, I would say that since we apparently, some harm was done by the previous family partition, I would move to deny this petition with the fear that more harm would be done.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a motion to deny the petition.
Second.
Second by Mr. Callender. Any other discussion?
I think they meet the legal criteria to approve it, but even though I don't think they should be built. And I understand that because Mr. Todd objects, if we did approve, because they have met all the legal ramifications, that it wouldn't be built anyway. They wouldn't be divided anyway.
Right.
So I just think that since they meet the legal criteria, that we should approve, knowing that it would not
I mean, he
be
could come in,
divided
yeah, he could come in next.
until they satisfied the landowner at the end.
Correct.
Well, I don't think we should wash our hands of the whole issue, though. That's just passing the buck on to circumstance. I still, we need to make, I'm just suggesting we make a statement by this motion, by saying, if you're going to ask for a family petition, do the right thing. And the right thing hasn't been done yet. If they come back, do the right thing, we can have this brought before us again and approve it.
Any other questions, comments?
Are we sure that that fail-safe is in place, that if everyone on that private servitude doesn't sign it, if one person doesn't sign it,
It's,
I
it
mean,
won't.
it's not,
It's dead. Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's,
that's
do the
for
right
sure.
thing. I mean, it is the right thing by the code. I mean, it's, meets all the requirements, private servitude passage.
And that's
Like
what
I
we're
said,
here to enforce, is code. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, each lot is still in the family member's name, and that's the legality of the code, is to transfer the lot to the family member. It's in the family member's name. It's not in Mr. Dwight Sears' name, it's still in the family member's name. Mr. Dwight Sears might be controlling the property, but it's legally in the family member's name. It's still legally a family partition. It hadn't been transferred back.
Well, and truly, Mr. Todd I think that's your name, can control whether they're going to be divided or not. It's
Yeah.
all up to him.
this
And
map
then
gets
there's
thrown-
other people who have to sign the plat to agree to it.
This map gets thrown in the garbage if one person doesn't
One
agree,
person.
basically.
And I'm sure something's gonna be worked out where, I mean, like I said, he's not, I mean, when did they move in? I mean, it hadn't been, that other family partition wasn't done, what, 4 months ago?
Yeah.
2, 3 months ago?
I remember
mean, it
the
wasn't-
name.
It's, things take time these days. It takes money, it's.
Okay. Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? And the motion is to deny the family partition. All those in favor of the motion to deny, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
One.
Okay, note that Mr. Bishop is opposed. So that motion is approved and the request is denied. Next agenda item is the Cynthia Savoy property, lots 1, 2, and 3. Again, Earls and Associates.
Representing the Becks on this following family partition, comments were made, addressed, corrected on the plat, asking the commission for approval.
Okay. And we see the staff has recommended approval. Any questions of commissioners? Okay, we'll open up the public hearing at this point. Stacy, do we have any cards?
No.
Okay, anybody who wish to speak? All right, we'll close the public hearing, and then at this point, I suppose, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Nizo moves to approve.
Seconds?
Second by Mr. Callender. Any other question, discussion? Any objection? Okay, that motion is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, the next family partition is Billy Joe L. Lambert property, lots 6-1, 6-2, and 6-3. Mr. Quintmont.
Good evening. Clint Quitmall, representing W.J. Quitmall Surveyors. Asking for the Planning Commission approval on the following family partition of the Billy Joe L. Lambert. All comments have been addressed.
Okay. And the staff has recommended approval. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, we'll open up the public hearing at this point. Any cards, Stacy?
None.
Anyone wish to speak? Okay, we will close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
So move.
Mr. Oria moves, Mr. Bishop seconds. Any objection? Okay, that motion stands approved. Next one is Bert W. Heath property, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, McLean and Associates.
Ellen Jackson with McLean and Associates, representing Mr. Bert Heat on this family partition. There weren't any comments and asking for your approval.
Okay. And you will note that the staff has recommended approval. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, let's open up the public hearing. Any cards, Stacy? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Mr. Chafisi moves for approval.
A second.
Mr. Ori seconds. Any objections? That motion stands approved. And our final family partition on the agenda is the Martin family partition, lots 1B, 1A, 1B, 1B, 1B7, 1B8, 1B9, and 1B10. Must be a large family there. McLennan and Associates.
Ellen Jackson again with McLean and Associates, representing the Gotros on this Martin family partition. The comments have been addressed, and we're asking for your approval.
Okay. Again, we'll note that the staff has recommended approval. Any questions comments from commissioners? Open the public hearing. Do we have any cards? No comments from the public. We'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Nizo moves, Mr. Ori seconds. Any objection? Okay, that motion stands approved. So that takes care of the family partitions. Moves us, thank you. Moves us to agenda item number 9, ordinances, public hearing to recommend approval or denial to the parish council, amendments to the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code. And first is 9A. This is ordinance SR 13-10, revisions to the subdivision regulations of the Unified Land Development Code pertaining to testing requirements. Okay, we'll get some background. Oh, that's Tim.
Yeah, this is what we brought to you last month.
Right.
And basically, it's just a revision on the testing requirements so that they're not testing for small pipes within that are not in the right-of-way.
Okay, all right. So we had the discussion last meeting. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
No, this is a good change and a good addition to the testing requirements.
All right, and it does require a public hearing. Do we have any cards on this one, Stacy? Okay, and no one wants to comment? We'll close the public hearing, and unless there's any other discussion or questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Mr. Callender moves to approve.
A second.
Mr. Chafisi seconds. Any objections? Okay, that ordinance will be referred then to the parish council. It's approved by us. And B is ordinance DR 1311, revisions to the drainage regulations of the Unified Land Development Code pertaining to placement of fill. This was yours, huh, Ricky, your recommendation? We're going to put this on your shoulders here.
Sure. This came to us from the Strategic Planning Committee. They asked us to look at addressing the placement of fill on individual lots and within major subdivisions. I actually presented this item to the Strategic Planning Group Monday night. They want to consider it further, but I think that if this body looks at the meat of this ordinance and agrees generally with the idea, and we can let the council or strategic planning argue about the height, I think that we'll be making a lot of progress. So what I want to do real quick is just run through it, talk about the big ticket items, I guess, and then I'll tell you where the hang-up is and where I foresee the hanging out for a while until the council can come to a resolution. So if you flip to your second page of the little packet where it talks about the proposed ordinance 17507, placement of fill, Section A speaks to a proposed certificate of elevation. We currently require it, but we wanted to codify what we were asking for, and the main differences are items 6 and 7. So item 6 is the lowest natural ground for the property, and item 7 is an explanation for how the elevation of the proposed structure is going to be achieved: fill, piers, chain wall, etc. Today, when they submit their proposed certificate of elevation, they give us the elevation of the foundation, and they give us the lowest adjacent grade, which typically is 5 or 6 inches out from that foundation, which is still going to be the top of that pyramid of dirt. We want to know what the lowest natural ground is in the area on your lot so that we know, okay, he's adding a significant amount of fill. So that's what Section A is. Section B is for individual lots. And there's a couple of subsections in this lot. This section. The first one is on lots smaller than a half acre. So no more than 48 inches of fill shall be placed in order to elevate the structure. Fill shall be limited to the foundation of the structure, meaning we don't want you to fill your whole lot. The side slope of the fill under your structure shall not exceed a 3-to-1 slope. We want that slope to be maintainable. We don't want it to be too steep so that the water sloughs off and the soil erodes. Fill shall not be placed closer than 10 feet to any property line in order to facilitate the collection and transportation of any increased runoff via side yard or rear yard swales if necessary. So we feel like if we maintain from the toe of the slope to the property line 10 feet, if there is an issue between property owners where property owner A says property owner B's new pyramid of dirt is impacting me because I'm getting more runoff, with that 10 feet, we can go in and require them to dig a swale to convey that water. And then compaction tests. This is already required via the IBC, but what we want to do is put it into our code so that people understand if your footer of your foundation is not extending at least 12 inches into natural undisturbed soil, we're going to require a compaction test for any fill that you bring onto your property. So we list the requirements there. Lastly, in that section is if more than 48 inches of fill is required to elevate the home, then piers or a chain wall shall be utilized to make up the difference. And you can combine the fill and the piers. If you need 60 inches, you can do 24 inches of fill and the rest in piers, or 48 inches of fill and the rest in piers. You can combine them to get to your elevation.
But 48 inches would be the max.
Of fill, correct. So the second section speaks to lots larger than a half acre. And generally, the first few sections are exactly the same. But when you get to section F, it says, if more than 48 inches of fill is required to elevate the home, then the homeowner shall submit a set of drawings stamped and sealed by a licensed engineer that depicts how the fill under the structure is mitigated through the use of stormwater ponds and or swales. And what we're saying here is any fill greater than 48 inches, you're going to have to mitigate with a pond, with swales, and you have to prove to us with engineered drawings how that balances. So we're saying if your lots are larger, you can use more fill because typically those are going to have a smaller impact on their neighbor because their neighbors are typically further away. So there's that concession. And then the last section there says, if after construction, and this is for both large and small lots, if after construction is determined through an on-site investigation by a parish drainage engineer that an adjacent property owner has experienced an increase in off-site runoff due to the construction, then the homeowner will be required by the Ascension Parish Engineering Department to construct a swale sufficient enough in size as stated by the parish drainage engineer to collect and convey the runoff away from the impacted property. This puts into code the ability for us to stop saying that's a civil matter to say, hey, our parish engineer believes you need a 6-inch deep swale that runs the full width of that 10 feet or some other variation, but we're going to go in and evaluate the problem and tell them they need to dig a swale. And if they don't, it probably becomes an adjudicated case matter where we'll dig the swale and then go and collect our funds for how much that costs to do. Section C reads, for a minor or major subdivision, on tracts of land being utilized for a minor or major subdivision, where a master stormwater plan is to be designed and constructed, no more than 48 inches of fill may be placed in the areas where residential lots are to be constructed. This restriction does not apply to the roadway being built to serve those lots. We had a subdivision here a little over a year ago where we made a condition that no more than 24 inches of fill might be placed on the lots. But that condition got overturned because we didn't feel like we were backed up by code. With this revision, we've raised that to 48 inches, and it's become part of the fill because we didn't believe a major subdivision should have a different set of rules than individual lots. We have the same section that was already in the code with regards to how the fill has to be tested and where it can be taken from when you're balancing, and that's what the rest of that code is basically saying. So I wanted to open up a public hearing, take the input, but I think it would be beneficial to this commission to make a recommendation to move it forward because the council is going to continue to debate whether or not 48 inches is high enough or too high, or whether they want to lower it to something lower. And we are not going to solve this tonight, and even whatever we come up with, it's going to be continue to be debated as we move on.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions of commissioners?
Well, I have some questions and comments. We can do the public hearing first. If you
Okay. All right, well, let me at this point then open up the public hearing. Do we have cards, Stacy? Anyone want to speak on this matter? Okay, well then we will close the public hearing and go ahead.
Yeah, on, Ricky, in paragraph, under proposed paragraph B1B, fill shall be limited to the foundation of the structure. Had you considered allowing an extension of the fill for some distance beyond the foundation? Because I think it would be wise to do that. I would suggest a language that would say, and we can talk about how much distance that would be, that fill shall not extend horizontally beyond X number of feet of the foundation. And that can be 1 foot or 2 feet or something, but some amount of distance beyond the edge of the foundation.
That's fine.
I just think structurally that makes more sense and would be better. And
Right.
probably practically, it's done that way anyway.
Yes, that was my understanding is, I assume there's going to be some lip or ledge, a foot, 12 inches, 6 inches, whatever it is, and then they build their foundation inside of that. If we want to just codify that, so it says no more than 24 inches around the foundation before the slope needs to begin, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I would say 24 inches would be fine unless someone has a better idea. So the language would say, fill shall not extend horizontally beyond 2 feet of the foundation.
Well, just speaking to what Mr. Chafisi is speaking about now, I think there should be some variation for larger lots than this. For instance, if you have a 10-acre lot,
Well, this is
you should be able,
individual lots. So.
but an individual lot can be that large. And there are many subdivisions with lots that large, especially in nice subdivisions like in Baton Rouge. So if you have a very large lot, like 10 acres, you should be able to put a 2-acre pad down so that you don't live on a pyramid, so that you could have like an Italian terraced yard coming down from the height of the house.
Okay,
Because it
so-
really wouldn't affect anyone.
I have no problem with that. I would want to revise the language then on lots larger than a half acre, where we have fill shall be limited to the foundation of the structure, maybe a sub-item under that. Any additional fill beyond the 24 inches, you have to do the engineered calculation. Because that guy is probably going to be digging a pond anyway to get the fill. And as long as we balance those larger sites on site, I have no problem with allowing those guys to have more fill. That's why we allow them to go above 48 inches. Would you be okay with that?
Yes.
Another point, for individual lots still, paragraph F, what you have now is that if more than 48 inches of fill is required to elevate the home, then piers or a chain wall shall be utilized. And I would just suggest that the language read, if the home or structure must be elevated more than 48 inches, then piers or a chain wall shall be utilized. It just reads better to me, but I'm open for other suggestions. The other point I wanted to make had to do with a 3-to-1 slope. I want to make sure that's very clear to everyone. So perhaps we can just expand that. This is paragraph C under, well, both on the page, on the first page, where we talk about a 3-to-1 slope, exceed 3-to-1, and on the second page where under 2B, I'm sorry, no, 2C. Perhaps we can say side slope of fill under the structure shall not be steeper than a 3 horizontal to 1 vertical slope. Make that very clear. So not exceed doesn't, I'm not sure, that could be interpreted in a different way. So we want to make sure that we're very clear on that. We don't want it steeper than a 3 horizontal to 1 vertical. And when I first read paragraph F under the larger lots larger than a half acre, if more than 48 inches of fill is required to elevate the home, I didn't realize that we were talking about allowing more than 48 inches of fill, but that's clear now. But when you talk about mitigating, are you talking about mitigating only the fill beyond the 48 inches? Because that's not clear. Because if you allow 48 inches without mitigating, then we're only talking about mitigating that volume of fill that's above 48 inches, right?
Correct. I didn't think it was fair to require them to mitigate the entire amount when we allow the guy on a half-acre lot to not.
So, wait, tell me what you're saying again?
And-
This
and-
is a lot, larger than a half acre.
Right, and he's got 60 inches of fill. We would require him to mitigate that 12 inches on top of the 48.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
So it's really just the fill, the volume of fill above the 48 inches, which we would allow without mitigating.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I can clarify that language. I think I had some written in a other version, but I'm going to clarify that I'm talking about the difference above
we
and
should
beyond the
we should
48
clarify
or
that.
above and beyond the 24 inches beyond the foundation.
Okay.
The ordinance seems to address only, and although it doesn't specifically say residential lots, should the final version would ever address commercial and agricultural uses? separately. And then also, just one, also, it doesn't really seem to address like additions to buildings that are already on a pyramid of dirt. So
Yeah,
that
Maury
would
makes
have
a
to
good
be
point.
addressed in some kind of way also.
What I had suggested in the earlier language, I forgot to make a point of it, but I said that if the home or structure must be elevated, I think that's our intention, right?
Right,
So if we add the word structure,
We had made a revision that I didn't want to muddy the water. This was the version was sent to y'all. We've made some revisions that changed the language from home to structure
You
in
didn't
all
tell
cases.
us?
Yeah. We made it in all cases because we were asking whether or not it applies to accessory structures, and we think this does. We don't want your accessory structure to be 60 inches up if your house is limited to 48. So we've changed the language to structure throughout, and commercial as well. For Tim and I had talked. Section C says for a minor or major subdivision, but I believe we went in and said for a minor or major subdivision for commercial tracts. We sort of added the language to address. Now for ag land, I'm fairly certain that if an ag person wanted to build a structure, if the lot was larger than a half acre, and they wanted to do more than 48 inches of fill, then there would be some mitigation they would need to do. A lot of that is already restricted by what our FEMA regulations say you can or can't do, which is the same thing with an addition or a remodel, is that it's based on the value of the house and the value of the addition that would determine if you need to elevate it.
Just so that you can clarify this to me, do non-habitable buildings have to be elevated above the floodplain?
At a certain square footage, they do.
What is that size?
600?
So a barn with a dirt floor would have to be elevated above that level.
If it's 100% enclosed, yes. If you don't have vent holes and all the other things that are required, anything over 600 square feet has to be elevated.
Would there, and that's a FEMA regulation.
Yes, sir.
We could not exempt.
No.
Ricky, and Mr. Commissioner, I just want to ask a question on the whole, before we're moving forward with this conversation. The way I understand it is that a lot of this, if not all of this stuff, is already regulated. We've adopted, as a parish, international building codes and international residential codes, as well as state statutes that protect adjacent property owners from dumping water on another residence. I mean, why are we having to embellish on this? Why is it not enough that the IBC and the IRC that we adopted is not? Are we just taking that further? Are we just trying to take that in ourselves?
I think that's part of it. I think the other part is the number of council members who are driving around in their districts and receiving numerous complaints that neighbors are building these pyramids of dirt so close to existing residential, so close that they're ready for there to be something in place that allows the parish to tell people you can't build it that high anymore. And so the rules get a little lengthy because I didn't want to simply state no more than 48 inches of fill and be done, because I wanted to sort of say, how would you do it if it was less than 48, if it was the lots are bigger or smaller? I wanted to sort of create some layers in there that would give people flexibility, but the height, whatever the height is decided on at the council level, 46, 48, 36, 24, whatever the height is, that's them saying we are done seeing new residential that much higher, that much disproportionate difference between neighbors. And they drive, and I could take you all over the parish and show you these pyramid homes, these homes that are built on ziggurats of dirt that just don't seem to fit in with the rest of the community.
Then how does the International Building Code, and I haven't read it myself, I'll admit, but I mean, how does that regulate?
The building
That
code
from
only
happening
says
already.
that the foundation
Fill requirements.
has to be compacted if it's not within 12 inches of natural ground. That's all the building code says. The building code, it could care less if your lot is 72 inches of fill. You've got to meet some compaction requirement, but
I
that's
guess-
not going to address the water runoff. That's not going to give the parish the ability to force somebody to dig a swale.
And I guess I feel like I don't care if you put 72 inches of dirt on your piece of property, and if you compact it, as long as it meets the International Building Codes. I mean, we're putting in another level of I guess, our rules of saying 48 inches or whatever arbitrary number we decide to come up with, whether it's 3 foot. I keep finding myself questioning that as to why we're taking it that much further, and I guess I'm just looking for clarification. There are field requirements in place already between FEMA and the IBC. So,
I think that's a question to take up the next time the strategic planning or the council takes up this item, is to stand up there and say, listen, we as the commission, we made a determination whether we want to follow it or not, and ask them why. I'm responding to a request, and that's what this is.
and most of that request is coming from the fact that our councilmen are just tired of telling people, hey, it's a civil matter. You dumping water, it's a civil matter. We've run into that before as well. I think we talked about the last meeting, and I guess the codes that we've adopted aren't enough. We can't enforce the codes enough, or there are no places in the code to enforce this without us taking it a little bit further and limiting that field to whatever number we come up with, 48 inches to 36 inches.
Correct.
You know, Josh, I had previously argued that put as much fill as you want as long as you mitigate it.
Mhm.
But there's a limit, and I'm not in favor of filling the swamp. You know, if someone has to put 6 feet of fill on the lot, probably shouldn't be developing that lot.
Rick, I have a question. This may be really picky, I don't know, but in paragraph 1F and 2F, it's prefaced, if more than 48 inches of fill is required to elevate the home. Suppose it's not required. Suppose they're not in a floodplain, they just want to do it anyway. Does this not apply to them?
No, it still applies. If we need to change the language, Lance and I talked about this. What if you're not even in the 100-year flood zone? Well, there's
Yeah.
still,
And you want to lift it up 6 feet?
right,
Yeah, that
there's
was my
there's
question.
still
Yeah.
off-site drainage concerns, and
Right.
as far as we understand it, they don't want there
This
to be
would
that
still
much
address that
difference.
then?
Correct.
Okay.
I had suggested this language before I understood that you could put more than 40 inches of, I was going to say if the home or structure must be elevated more than 48 inches. But I guess the intention is if the home or structure will be elevated more than 48 inches with fill, then the homeowner shall be. So it's not a matter of whether it needs to or not, or is required to. So, but I think the language is fine, really. I had only one other question. On, under major and minor subdivisions, paragraph 5A, this would be C5A. I get why the development must be the compensating storage must be in the same watershed. What's the deal about shall not be greater than 1 foot higher than or 1 foot lower than the base flood elevation of the developed site? Why?
That's just basically so it's comparable. You're filling an area and not pulling it in from a lot higher, and you're trying to keep the capacities the same of floodwater. And if it's at a higher elevation, then it's not going to be an equal amount for compensating storage.
So did we make that up, or was that something we got? from-
It's been there for it's longer than I've been here, so I don't know where it came from.
I don't have any particular problem with it. I just wonder why. What's the rationale? Because I didn't get that. But because if you got compensating storage, what's the difference whether it's a foot higher or a foot lower? And I, even as an engineer, may not understand that. I'd probably like to learn more about that, but I'm not going to object to this language.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, where do we stand? We talked about making a few changes in this. Where do we stand with this particular document now? Do we want to approve it as it's written there, or with the amendment? What sort of changes have we talked about making?
I don't know that any of the changes you've discussed are substantive.
Right.
They're basically grammatical,
Okay.
and I can make all of those changes, and like changing the word home to structure, because we just wanted to make it a little clearer, and with the motion to just recommend approval contingent on all those changes being made, because I'm not going to change any of the elevation numbers, I'm not going to change any of the widths. I'll just change grammar and some punctuation here or
Well,
there.
moving the dirt out from the foundation by 2
Yeah,
feet
that is a substantive change,
substantive,
but you guys recognize that one?
Can you just send us, we can approve it tonight, or send us the
Yes.
Send us the
Okay.
change.
That will
so
be
we
done
can-
first thing tomorrow.
Okay. If if the vote goes that way. we
If
can
it vote,
approve.
if,
Yeah.
if we vote
All
that
right.
way, right.
All right,
I'm
any
the
other?
only one that threw a stick there. I was just had questions.
Yeah, I would like to hold it over for another month of discussion before we go ahead and approve this, because it's an important thing, it affects a lot of people, and I do, my feelings kind of are similar to Josh's. I think we're adding another difficult layer of regulation to meet, and there's already so many.
I feel like we're moving forward on it. I guess I'm not grasping the whole thing. I guess I just need to get a better grip on the whole thing. I feel like you guys are all, moving forward on it confidently, but I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah. And this came from the Strategic Planning Committee of the council?
The request to look at it did. All
Not-
of this
not
language
these-
came from me.
Okay, I got you, all right. Okay, so then,
Make a motion, Mark.
I move that we continue the discussion next meeting on this.
that we put it on the
Defer.
agenda of next month's meeting and then continue the discussion and potentially act then, but no action tonight.
I'd like to second that.
Mr. Ori seconds. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see Mr. Compton make the changes that he made, that we talked about tonight, and bring it back if we do pass this motion, and an updated version, and we can take it from there if it does go to the next meeting.
Okay,
Best of both worlds.
all right.
Another
so-
comment?
Yes.
I guess what I'd ask that we consider, are there specifics we'd like staff to present to us? Because the changes that they're about to bring back to us, there was only one substantive change.
Right.
So now we're gonna be looking at basically the same thing we're talking about right now, so maybe we need to give them some homework, bring back to us
Do
something.
you have some specifics?
I would like
uh,
to see a third level for lots over 5 acres. With,
Yeah, The
with
big
less
change is, the
restrictive,
big change is just requiring,
regulation.
well, I think the lots over a certain size are not restricted in terms of the height of fill. The lots over half acre.
And I understand.
So what are you asking for,
I
Mark?
thought they were.
14 inches.
Well, they've got if it's,
I think
no, you
that
can put
it's-
fill over 48 inches on a lot over half
I think
acre.
lots over 5
With
acres should be
engineering.
exempt from it all.
You're exempt for putting any amount of
I
fill
think
on a
all
lot?
these
So I could,
regulations, the
so I could
grade,
put
the
72
height,
inches of
fill,
fill
everything should be
3
exempt.
inches from my property line because my lot is bigger than 5 acres?
There's a problem with just the simple language. It has to be, if you've got a lot over 5 acres, maybe you can
Include the
put,
grade, but exempt
you can
other than
probably
that.
put 72 inches of fill in the middle of that, for a house, size of a house, and not impact the runoff from that piece of property. But then you're talking about adding some
I
language.
don't know
how
that we can
difficult
write
that
language for
would be.
every situation. And
Yeah.
if we're
Right.
simply going to say, because your lot is bigger than X,
Yeah.
you don't have to follow any rules, doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But if we're going to say, you've got to follow these rules but not these rules, to me, now you're sort of getting into this gray area of which rules do we think are important. If I can still leave my 10-foot buffer but put 84 inches of dirt 10 feet away from my property line, have we really solved anything? Because now we're saying, okay, no, on a 5 acre, you got to draw an X and your foundation has to be built in the middle. That's defeatist. We're simply saying if your lot is bigger than a half acre and you want to do more than 48 inches, follow these rules and prove to us that your drainage is mitigated, which to me is fair because we're saying you can do it.
But
Your
then
lot
let's-
is big enough.
But then, if that's really what we're looking at, just have a regulation to prove that your drainage is mitigated. And the aesthetics are not our business.
Mark, I had taken that position earlier, as I mentioned before. The problem with that is we've seen so many people come before us that say, in spite of the fact they live next to a subdivision with a retention pond that's supposed to mitigate the drainage, their perception is that it's causing a
Yeah.
drainage problem. So I'm not saying this is perfect, and I'm not saying, maybe we're not ready to go forward with it. The whole big deal here is saying we're not going to allow you to put any amount of fill, and just so you can prove by an engineering calculation that you can mitigate the amount you put there. We're saying that. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. Even as an engineer, like I said, at first, in the black and white engineering world, it sounds great. You can mitigate. You put the fill there. If you mitigate it, it's fine. But people's perception is that it's causing a drainage problem. Perception does matter. So we're talking about limiting the amount of fill, requiring that you allow, if you have to put your house on piers, you allow flow to go under the home, and you have less to mitigate, and potentially causes fewer drainage problems.
I just don't know if perception should infringe upon property rights. It should be more than perception. It should be hardcore facts.
And what,
I'm all-
and what
all-
Maury's saying,
all
like with the
agreement.
barn, you know, on something larger than 5 acres, you want to put a barn in the middle of 5 acres, and now I've got an incurred cost of having to get an engineer hired to go prove that I'm going to be able to mitigate it. That's kind of a, I don't know.
Well, it's like I
It's a
said, I think you
problem.
can take a 5-acre piece of property and put a house on any amount of fill in the middle of that property and not impact anything.
Now we have to prove it if we pass this
Yeah, right now.
by stamped.
So, but you're talking about, are we going to address every potential case that could possibly come up? We've got to do, I'm not opposed to doing a third level, as Maury is suggesting, but that there's many levels beyond 3 levels that we could be faced with. So we have to, somewhere we have to make these, draw these lines.
Well, and I think it suggests, I know that, that language is, because the way it's going to be written, address commercial property, but some commercial uses have to be, they cannot be on piers. They have to be on a slab. And we should address that.
But commercial's governed by
I
a
understand.
drainage impact study, I believe, right?
That's correct, I know.
Oh, okay. Does that doesn't cover what you're saying?
I don't think so.
No?
If the lot is larger than a half acre and it's commercial, you're going to mitigate that with your stormwater plan. If you're building on a lot smaller than a half acre, commercial, and you need to build that commercial lot higher than 48 inches, you probably shouldn't be commercial.
But as it is now, if you're doing a commercial property on a lot smaller than half an acre, you still have to submit.
Today,
Stormwater
if they're
plan,
less
right?
than 17,500 square feet of impervious surface, they don't have to do any stormwater improvements. And if they're a lot smaller than a half acre, it's highly unlikely that they're going to have that much impervious
Right.
surface.
It's
Yeah.
less pervious surface.
Less pervious, that's not impervious.
We're about to change it.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor to continue the discussion next month. And Josh, you
I'll
seconded that?
second that motion, yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Okay,
I just want to go back to what Mr. Callender said. So literally, all we're going to be doing is looking at this code again without any substantial changes.
No,
Because
literally what we're doing is making a big change. We're changing from allowing people to mitigate their fill to saying you can only put a maximum amount of fill. That's a big deal. I know we've talked about it for months, but
I don't disagree that maybe another month of public hearing where people watch this meeting and want to come out and speak against this, because I think no one's going to speak for it. But the document, more or less, is going to be the same, because I don't know that a third level at this point changes anything.
I feel like I'm seconding it just so, on a personal level, I can chew on it a little bit more and get some more input and get a better grip on it. Right or wrong, I don't know. Like you're saying, Gasper, it's a big change. It
big
is.
change.
It's,
any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any objection? Okay, so that motion carries, and we will discuss it again next month.
But as Jackie mentioned, Ricky's going to make these changes, get them back to us.
Yeah.
We'll have a revised.
Okay.
I would suggest if anybody else has any further input.
Yeah.
In the meantime, let's get them to the staff so they can
Yeah.
have that also.
We could have something specific in writing to discuss.
Right.
Okay. All right, so brings us to agenda item number 10, staff report. No additional staff report. Okay,
Wait,
11, engineer and
missed
staff
one.
report. Now, we've got an agenda item.
Commissioner, 13, 14?
Did we miss one?
Well, that's coming in agenda 11A, okay?
Oh.
And that's for consideration, ordinance SR 1314, revisions to the subdivision regulations and the Unified Land Development Code, pertaining to protection of existing watersheds and conveyance systems requirements. And this is Tim?
Yes, this is what you just referred to, is that we have a code in place that basically, if you develop a property, you have to do calculations done by a professional engineer of no net increase in the flow off the site. And this code, there's a section of the code that limits that, so that if you have a small development, it's not burdening them with this change also. And we say if there's 17,500 square feet of impervious surface. And some people just look at that and say impervious surface. If they don't look at how the parish defines an impervious surface, which is in our definition section, they may just think it's buildings and pavement area, whereas it includes anything that's less pervious. Basically, that's what is meant by the impervious. So that's what we're changing that code to say. Less pervious as opposed to impervious.
Where did this come from?
Uh,
I mean, do we have
basically,
complaints?
I've
saw a
been
hand raised.
reviewing these plans, and it's usually just a matter of, it is buildings and parking lots. But, and then people have, said, okay, we're putting in the limestone, parking lot, so that's a pervious surface. Well, that's not how the code intended this to apply. They, just reading the definition, it was clear that the code meant that anytime you decrease the perviousness.
Right. I feel like that almost kind of takes it out of the context that now you can't refer to the definition of impervious surface, which could define it. Now you're creating a new definition you need to put in the list of less pervious. But, I mean, if it's...
Well, you can make improvements on a lot and those improvements not be completely impervious. It can just be less porous than, you can use porous if you like, less porous than what was there before, which means they still can absorb some of the runoff, but not all of it. You get it.
Right, but...
So,
Yeah,
I don't
guess
have a
it's-
problem with
I don't
the
have a
change.
problem with it either.
Yeah.
I can't believe we have a problem with it, but I
Well,
can't
just,
believe that.
some people just look at it and they just see it right in the code, they don't go back, and then they argue, like, oh, well, I'm not, this is an impervious surface I'm putting in, this is a pervious surface.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this particular item is not a public hearing, it's just for discussion. Would we have the public hearing next month?
Yeah, next month it'll be the public hearing.
Okay.
Yep. And actually, also, we're taking out an incorrect reference in the next
Okay.
paragraph.
Okay.
We're also doing that.
All right. Do you have your other regular report that you're going to give, Tim, or is?
Yep. So we have 6 subdivisions in their bond period now. There are 7 subdivisions under construction. 4 have been approved for construction, but they haven't gone to construction yet. There are 3 that are under review. Construction plans have been submitted, and we're reviewing those at this time. So that's a total of 20 subdivisions, and once these all get built and into service, it'll be another 1,199 lots.
Okay. All right, any questions or discussions? Ricky, you had something else you were getting ready to say, or?
Yeah, on the staff report item, we had explored several options for that language, and I think that's something for you guys, once again, to chew on, is if the language read, commercial developments that create less than 17,500 square feet of, of new surface, of improved surface? You can add any number of adjectives in front of the word surface. Less pervious is the one that was settled on, but if we want to talk about other options, we're simply stating if it's not natural ground anymore, you've changed that surface, and we want you to calculate your 17.5, including all of that.
We can make it a run-on sentence and
Yeah, you could do
take
that.
the whole definition of impervious surface. Any
Well,
surface
the point is that you're getting more runoff than you did before. you could even get into some sort of language like that. If you've increased the
No.
rate of runoff
Right.
of the property,
Well, actually, that's what this is
Intended to do.
making it so that people that are developing small lots don't have to go through the calculations to show us that.
I don't have a problem with that. Less pervious.
Uh,
I had to look it up,
Do we
see if
need- yeah,
pervious
we
was a
need to do
word
that.
or not.
Okay.
So,
All right. So if we, yeah, okay, so for
it's Latin, yeah.
the potential ordinance SR 1314, if we want to have a public hearing, we have to vote tonight to put it on the agenda and have a public hearing next month, so.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Bishop moves, Mr. Nizzo seconds. Any objection? Okay, so we will put it on the agenda for next month. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 12, adjourn.
So moved.
Move seconded, we're adjourned. We